Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to propose and support two amendments to the appropriation bill that is on the floor today and will continue into next week. And they both have a common theme, and that theme is to keep faith with the American people, to not put ourselves here in Washington, here in Congress, in a different higher class than middle-class Americans, but to be one of them, to truly represent them, to truly fight for them here in Washington. The two amendments address this in different ways. One is to block a pay raise that would otherwise happen for members of Congress, even in the midst of this very, very sluggish economy, barely getting out of the recent recession. And, Mr. President, as you know, there is an automatic pay raise in the law. This was done years ago, really behind closed doors in a bit of a smoke-filled room, to put an automatic pay raise for members of Congress in the law so that most every year it just happens automatically. No inconvenience of having to propose it, actually having to come to the Senate floor, come to the floor of the House of Representatives and justify it, and God forbid, have to vote for it. It just happens. I disagree strongly with that system. I think that entire system and premise is offensive. And for that reason, Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri and I have a bill, a proposal to undo that and require that any future pay raise have to be proposed, justified on the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House, and actually voted on. This amendment is not that entire bill. This amendment is focused on the here and now to block the automatic pay raise that would happen this year if we don't act. Now, you will hear from members of the committee, handlers of this appropriation bill, well, this amendment isn't germane to this bill. Well, the folks who set up the automatic pay raise system several years ago were very clever. They figured out a way that an amendment like this would not be germane to any appropriation bill, would not be germane to any bill. That's why we need to act on this bill, because this may be one of the few appropriation bills, few spending bills we actually deal with on the floor of the Senate this year. To Congress's credit, in the midst of the recent recession, Congress denied itself these automatic pay raises. And so they have not happened since 2009. But, Mr. President, we're not into healthy growth. The American middle class, Mr. President, is not doing just fine. Unemployment is still over 7.5%, 7.6%, well above the 5% promised when Congress and President Obama passed the $1 trillion stimulus. In fact, we've had 53 straight months with unemployment above 7.5%. That is not a healthy economy. That is not recovery. And so as Americans continue to suffer, continue to look for work, continue to look for full-time work, as part-time becomes more the norm, particularly in the era of Obamacare, we need to relate to them and not set ourselves apart. We need to be a fighter for them, not a member of a higher, different class in Washington. And one simple but important way to do that is to say no pay raise when we're in the midst of this very, very sluggish non-recovery. Again, Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri has joined me in this effort. I appreciate her partnership on the broader bill, and I appreciate her partnership on this amendment, the Vitter Amendment number 1746. And I urge all of my colleagues, Democrats as well as Republicans, to adopt and support this common sense amendment. This is an important message. This is an important statement. And the question and the choice is simple. Are you going to be a true representative of the folks back home, relate to them, be one of them? Or did you really come to Washington to put yourself in a different, higher class? The answer needs to be the first answer provided. We need to represent the folks back home not put ourselves in a different higher class. And this pay raise amendment is one way to do that. Say no to any congressional pay raise in the midst of this horribly slow economy. And, Mr. President, my second amendment also continues this theme, and it relates to our health care benefits. But it's really the same issue and the same theme. Are we one with the folks we were elected to represent, or are we trying to set ourselves as a different higher class here in Washington? This amendment is Vitter Amendment number 1748, and it would ensure that all members of Congress, all congressional staff, all executive appointees deal with Obamacare in the same way ordinary Americans do. They have to go in the exchange. They have to deal with their health care that way. They don't get special treatment. Now, in the midst of the Obamacare debate, that issue came up. I brought the issue up. I brought an amendment to the floor. My Louisiana colleague in the House, John Fleming, did the same thing in the House. Because of the attention we focused on that issue, there was a limited provision in the law that said members of Congress and their direct staffs would be in the exchanges. However, very conveniently, some of the details were jiggered around so that members of the leadership and their staffs and committee staffs would somehow be in a different, higher category, and they would not be subject to the same Obamacare rules. They would benefit from the very generous and very lucrative federal employee health benefit plan that Congress has traditionally been under. I think we should undo that. I think we should again be one of the American people, relate to the American people, and get the same treatment through the exchanges that the great majority of them will do under Obamacare. Problem is, here on Capitol Hill, again, behind closed doors, the effort is largely in the opposite direction. Wall Street Journal unveiled this on April 25th of this year. It reported that Senator Reid and Congressman Steny Hoyer had initiated some behind closed doors secret discussions to actually fix the problem as they saw it and put all members of Congress and all of our staffs back in that select category, not with the American people, not in the exchanges, but in that select higher category and be granted preferential treatment. Now, because that hit the press, because that word got out, I am hopeful that those secret negotiations have stopped. We need to make sure that we don't move in that direction. Obamacare is a train wreck. Implementation is causing dramatic problems for millions upon millions of Americans. But the solution is not to fix it selectively for us. The solution is to fix it for everybody, to fix it for average middle-class Americans. And if we do that, we would benefit as well. And so this amendment not only blocks the effort by Senator Reid and Steny Hoyer and others to move members of Congress and our staffs back into a select category and protect us from the train wreck of Obamacare implementation. The solution is to broaden that pool and actually have that same treatment along with ordinary Americans for every member of Congress, for all of our staffs, for leadership, for committee staffs, and also for President Obama's appointees. And so my amendment, Vitter Amendment number 1748, on which Dean Heller is a co-sponsor, would do just that. It would ensure that all bureaucrats, all Obama appointees, all congressional staff, all members, leadership and otherwise, all of our staffs, committee and otherwise, are subject to Obamacare and are not put into a select higher class and offered preferential treatment. Again, common theme with my other amendment. That's how we relate to the folks we represent. That's how we're truly one of them. Obamacare is a problem. Implementation is a train wreck. But the solution isn't to put ourselves in a higher class divorced from that problem. The solution is to live that problem ourselves, and hopefully that will promote us and motivate us to solve that problem for all of the American people. Again, this is not a partisan amendment. This should not be a partisan fight. This is about, are we truly part of the states we represent? Do we truly relate to those citizens who sent us to Washington? Or do we come here and put ourselves in a select different class, give ourselves preferential treatment under law after law after law, in this case, Obamacare? Again, this is Vitter Amendment number 1748, and I urge all of my colleagues, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everyone, to support this, to tell your constituents. No, I didn't come here to put myself in a special class. I didn't come here to get preferential treatment. I came here to fight for you. And yes, Obamacare has major issues, major problems. Implementation is, as one of my Democratic colleagues has forthrightly said, a train wreck. But the solution isn't to fix it behind closed doors selectively for us. The solution is to fix it, which personally I think means delay or repeal it for the American people. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield back the floor. I also suggest the absence of a quorum.